can tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. You know me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where comedians confess something they want to get off their chest. I say that it's what it's about, but pretty much since the pandemic, it's become way more looser. It's really a way for me to keep up with my friends that I have not seen in over a year. So, very excited for my guest today. We haven't seen each other over a year, but we've seen each other over podcasts. She's the co-host of Ethnically Ambiguous podcast and produces multiple shows for iHeartRadio, such as the Daily Zeitgeist. You may have heard of it. Put your hands together for Anna Hossnieh. What's up?
I'm so used to being on the other side that I almost started clapping for myself out of autopilot behavior of yes, thanks for joining us. And then I was like, okay, you idiot, you are the guest.
I love it. I mean, we should all get used to clapping for ourselves. I've been saying this in quarantine, which is to nobody because it's just to myself, but that we are we should all count ourselves as a person. Whenever people say things like nobody likes this or nobody, I'm like, do you? Because you count. So you should clap for yourself.
You.
But starting...
I like that you say you're saying it to no one, but you're really saying it to Wushu, right?
This is true, but he's not a person. That's going too far.
Yes, I guess you're right.
You're right. I am trying to teach him to talk with buttons, and I swear to God he understands and doesn't want to learn because he knows it will mean he'll have to listen to me more.
Yeah.
I watch him looking at the buttons, and he's kind of calculating, should I get this or not? But I do like to start by asking for a good confession because I like to start on a positive note. So this is your chance to clap for yourself. Anna, what is something good you want to confess?
I have a project I'm going to do on Twitch soon.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave that there, where I'm going to be streaming with someone who I'm not going to announce or whatever. I just won't say their name yet.
That means
but
it's a
look
big
out
deal.
for that because
Love
it's going to be a fun little Twitch something.
What's your Twitch channel? Can they start following you now?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know yet.
Okay. That's okay.
That
So follow Anna on all the socials.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter and you'll
I love that. I love it. It's a very Hollywood tease to only be able to say that you have something coming out soon. Because then you know it's a bigger deal because you're not allowed to talk about it.
I'm still nailing down the details, and I just, you never know. You never know what will happen.
Well, we're talking about Wushu. I know you have a puppo as well, Ace Biscuits, who is very, very nice friends with Wushu.
Who loves Wushu.
Yeah, they're so cute. Wushu is an emotional support animal, and this podcast is loosely, I started it when I kind of realized how great going to therapy was because I didn't have that option as a kid, or I wasn't aware of the world of mental, I guess, health resources. So, I'm sure ACE provides that as well, but just wanted to get generally your, what do you do? What's your mental health routine? What do you do when you're feeling down? Do you have a confidant? Do you have a routine? Do you go to therapy? Whatever you feel like sharing, just, because I think everyone has such different routines.
I was in therapy up until the end of December, but I kind of started. There was one thing my therapist said that made me kind of I don't know, lose my respect in them, and that's kind of was huge for me. Where I was like, well, if I all of a sudden think this person's not necessarily an idiot, but something they said, I was like, I don't know if you're listening, and so I stopped talking. I discontinued my visits with them, but
that's actually a sign of growth because you're drawing a boundary, which is something you learn about in therapy.
I'm not gonna say I don't need to be in therapy. I definitely do. So I need to work on finding someone new. But in the last month, where I've just been kind of freewheeling, a lot of my, I have a routine which helps me stay sane, which is just working, doing my job all day, and then hanging out with my dog. I walk my dog 3 times a day just to get out and interact with the outside world. And then we
should do a little, now that I feel in the beginning I was really holding up with Wushu, but now sometimes we'll go on outdoor hikes when it's safer. Ace and Wushu should outdoor hang because he's so lonely.
He would love that because he actually he gets really upset when I don't let him go to a dog to like interact. And I'm like, well, I don't know this owner. Like, there are a few owners who like I see around and we're both wearing masks, so I'm comfortable like getting a little closer to them for our dogs to like interact. But like randos, like I don't know this person's deal, especially if they're not wearing a mask. Then I'm like, I really not gonna risk walking up to them so you can sniff their dog. And he gets
Wushu's
so
the same.
upset. He
really
just starts
grumpy.
crying and growling, and you're like, dude, I understand, because again, he used to come to the office with me, and you know, you would bring Wushu, and you know, my coworker Sophie had her dog Andy, and they would all play. You know, they had fun, and now he has just my cats. And
I feel like we're like in I don't know why the first reference I thought it was Harry Potter, but when like Ron and Hermione and Harry are separated for the summer and then they wouldn't let Harry get his owls, I'm like, that's what we're doing to our dogs. Like Ace and Andy and Wushu, they're just like, oh, when's summer vacation over?
yeah, they want to go back to school and hang out. But yeah, a lot of my mental health surrounds me just like hanging out and playing with him, like almost to a point of like aggressively playing with him where I'm like rolling around on the ground just to like get energy out or like frustrations or whatever. Then another thing is like end of the night, I smoke a little bit of weed and I sit down and I watch something on TV, and that helps me unwind because it like shuts my brain down. Like I'm like too high to really have any sort of like reasonable thoughts in my head. Like I'm just like, huh? And that like actually helps me unwind because I'm not necessarily thinking about anything. Or if I like start looking at my phone, I start getting drawn into something random.
Yeah.
And like, that's a way of unwinding for me.
Yeah, it's kind of meditative, right? Like I'm not quite there yet with meditation. It's really something I got way more into during quarantine, just by, I guess, necessity. But they always talk about, or the voice in the apps are always like, the point is to have no thoughts. And I'm like, well, I'm thinking of your voice now, so how do I do this? But that's like what you're talking about, is sort of getting to that state where you can just be and not be like, what's the next thing I have to do?
Yeah, I'm literally just like, I'm like looking, something will have popped in my head. I'll be like, either like, oh, I've been meaning to look at this famous person's Instagram. Like literally as simple as that. And I'm just scrolling like, oh, so that's your vibe. Or like, oh, yeah, remember like I wanted to look at this person's Wikipedia. And then I'm just reading a random Wikipedia. And it's like, I'm just like, oh. And that's it. That's all that's going through my mind. And it's like not really anything I need to know.
That's great. To me, I mean, that's very soothing. Just even hearing you describe it, it seems like an ASMR podcast. Just like, I want to do this, and then I just do it because that's
how my mind works.
That is really nice. In a way, I feel like it's very natural. Like we live in the tech world, but when I've been thinking about animals a lot. Can you tell I'm alone? When animals like have nothing to do, they're not bored, they'll explore their environment, or they'll sleep, or they'll eat. Like what they do, something they need to do, and when they have nothing they need, they just play or explore. And I kind of feel like looking up random things on Wikipedia is exploring, like not in a unhealthy. It's a very healthy thing to like. You need to know what's in your environment, but since so much of our environment is digital and through the internet, just looking up a random website and like scoping it out to me is like my dog going into a new house and being like, let me check out this window. What's over here?
Yeah.
Well, I love it. It sounds like you have a healthy setup, which is great. What did I want? Oh, I feel like sorry, I just had a brain fart. Something you said I wanted to respond to. You were saying about, God damn it, I'm right before the TV, right before watching something. Oh, I'm forgetting.
My dog hanging out, my therapist being useless.
Okay, sorry. I'm gonna edit this part out. Maybe I'll keep it in. It's very honest. The part, this has not happened to me until just this weekend, all of quarantine. And I don't mean that in that like I've been so occupied or never been bored, but like a true boredom, the way I feel in like elementary school when it's just like a lazy summer day and you're like, I'm bored, and your parents go like, do this, and you're like, no. I got bored this weekend, and like truly bored, and in a way that I like almost embraced, because I was hanging out with my boyfriend and we were just like, it was Saturday night. It was a really nice day out all day. So I felt like that feeling of like, if we weren't in quarantine, that energy would probably be like, hey, let's all go dancing tonight. Or I'd probably, even if I had nothing planned, would like try to get something together. Knowing I couldn't do that, I was like, it's okay, I'll sit at home. But then just sitting, I was like, can we do something? Like anything, like a puzzle or like it literally, I have not felt bored all year. And what I realized about that was it's kind of good because it means I'm not stressed. I'm not anxious. I'm not actually worried about anything. It's just a true bored emotion of like, hey, you kind of addressed all your needs at the moment. Like there might be more later, but like you get to just kind of have fun. And yeah, I don't know. That happened to me this weekend, and you talking about like winding down really reminded me of that. So I wanted to share. Has that ever happened to you? Like, what was the last time you felt bored? Like truly just bored?
I've hit a few walls during this quarantine where I've just like I've woken up on a Saturday morning and been like, what next? What next? What else? What else? You know, like, okay, I read that book. Okay, I didn't like that book, but I'll read it anyway. Like, I feel like I've been like, I can't call any, like, who am I going to go hang out with today? No one. Like, I feel like I've exhausted all my people where I've been like, let's meet at the dog park and hang out socially distanced while our dogs run around. Like I've done that so many times. I didn't feel comfortable like harassing another person. Be like, come on, man, don't you want to hang? Like, yeah, it really like hit a wall of like, you know, like I've watched all the TV I wanted to watch. What else? I have to wait a week for something new to come out, and then like, you know, like I feel like I've said everything I had to say to my boyfriend. Like there was just like nothing left, and I've hit that wall a few times because I feel like I have to hit it to then like re-energize myself to get back in the like, you're in quarantine, it is what it is.
Gotcha.
And you just have to keep moving.
Interesting. It's like both. I think there's like both it's not good or bad, but yeah, there's obviously the cons of it. Being bored is not fun because then you're bored. But I guess the pros are that, like you said, like you're very much in the present moment. Like you can't really be bored if you're being haunted by past trauma because then you'll just be haunted by the past. So to be truly bored, I think, is like a sign that you're like living in the moment, which I think is kind of neat. Yeah, I don't know. What do you do to get out of that? Do you just like let it pass, or are you like someone who's actively like, I'm gonna learn to code or whatever? Speaking about myself.
I'm gonna learn to code. No. I just force myself through it, honestly. I just like have to put my head down and be like, unfortunately, you're in a shitty place mentally because you just don't know what else to do. And then I'll start like going through things in my room. Like I'll start decluttering, or I'll just start like just playing with like I literally like I'll just start like picking stuff up off my desk and like looking at like it's as simple as that. I'll just be like, why do I have this?
That's so fun. That's how you find new. That's where you create new ideas, though. Half the time, like people say that like when you're stuck on an idea, just walk across the room and like pick up a sculpture. Which I'm like, I don't have sculptures lying around, but I did start because of quarantine and being in the same environment over and over. I did start putting out like little tchotchkes. Like I used to just, you know, from when I was a child, like put them in a box because I'm like, I don't want to throw these memories away. But now I've started putting them as like little decoration, like little glass pony, things like that. Because then I can walk up and just like hold it and look at it. And sometimes I'm like, just doing this makes me feel like, oh, my brain is doing something different than just looking at the window.
Yeah, that helps. I'll literally just go look at my bookshelf and see what books I have. And be like, do I want to read any of these again? Usually no, because I'm like, I rarely reread books unless it's like real good. But I'll just like look and be like, oh, I forgot I had that book. That's interesting. Why did I buy that book? Or I'll be like, ooh, I need to get rid of this book. This is not a good look or something, you know?
Oh my gosh. It's funny because I feel like that what you're describing is very healthy, and it's not that I'm unhealthy, but it's making me realize I need to get more comfortable being bored, because this is what actually happened this weekend when we were bored, is we ordered food, so I was like, it's fine, maybe when the food gets here I'll eat and I won't be so bored. And then the delivery person forgot a bunch of stuff, which I took as me manifesting because I was bored, so it gave us an errand to do, and I was like, God damn it, this isn't what I wanted. And so I had to go back and get it, and then I scared myself for no reason because I thought there was a ghost in the house. And then I
no.
convinced myself there was because the light wasn't turning on. Still haven't solved it. It's probably not a ghost. For sure, it's just some sort of weird electromagnetic thing, which you could say is a ghost, but also you could say it's not. But it wouldn't
Yeah.
turn on, and then I asked my boyfriend to go with me to get water because the light wasn't turning on. And I showed him, and then he got scared. And then he pulled out his phone to be like, let me use the flashlight, and it died. And because of those all happening at once, we ran into the room going, oh my God, there's a ghost. And then, and then we waited for his phone to charge. But then what I realized is I bet you my brain is just so overactive that it was like, Teresa is bored. Guys, let's do something. And then it created a ghost to entertain
wild.
me, because then later, like, we went downstairs and then the light worked after we came back up. No explanation. So I'm like, I swear to God, my brain was just like, Teresa, in order for you to survive, you need to find things that are fun. So we're going to make up that there's a ghost. So
That's interesting. That's actually kind of fun because you've created like an adventure for yourself of like, is there a ghost we must figure out? Let's get the ghost hunters in. Next thing you know, you're like got your little weird contraption. And you're like, oh, wow, this area looks suspicious, or it sounds suspicious. There's definitely an energy here. I watched a lot of those shows.
wow, maybe that's the solution. Half of the haunted houses in the middle of nowhere are just boredom.
It's like I got nothing to do. That's probably also why a lot of like ghosts manifested in people's lives, like in the olden times, if you will, because there was literally nothing to do. So you're like, did you hear that? You heard that, right?
Oh, there's a mystery.
ghost.
It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and everyone's like, dude, keep cross stitching, and they're like, nope,
It's
something's
definitely a
going on.
ghost. Can't sit in this chair and look and learn my ABCs because it's haunted.
Yeah.
Must take me outside to the park, mother. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we're back, we'll get your confession. All right. And we're back. Anna, the moment has come. Is there anything you would like to tell me?
Yes, thank you for asking. You're a better therapist than my therapist. What if that was my thing? My therapist never asked me anything about
She just
myself.
starts by telling you about her day, and then it's like, oh, those thumbs up. You're like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, what? No, okay. So this is along the lines of everything I do in life, which is be a Middle Eastern person and talk about it on my podcast. But this is something I feel like I have maybe talked about this in the past, but I've never gone into detail about it.
Yeah, no worries.
I've spoken about it in passing because I always think it's like a funny joke, but like the reality of it is like kind of weird. And my dad doesn't like when I joke about it, which is kind of funny. Because he's like, it's not that wild. And I'm like, it is. But when I was in Iran, I want to say 2016, I was in Iran that year. I had a very funny interaction with my cousin. So to give some context, I, on my dad's side, am the youngest cousin.
Okay. Yes. Of the kids, of like the siblings, kind of.
Yes, of my dad's, because my dad is the youngest in his family. So all my cousins are like, ranging in age from like 30 to like 60-year-old men. So I have a lot of cousins who are like literally 50-year-old men who have like grown children who are my age.
Whoa.
So I have this one favorite cousin because he's just like, he's literally like a 55-year-old man, but he is just, he has the youngest like sensibilities. Like he's always down to like joke around and have fun with me. And this is also everyone lives in Iran. My parents are the only two people out of their families to come to America from Iran. So all these family members are in Iran. So, and they've never lived in America. They may have lived in like Europe every once in a while or like Turkey, but for the most part, they've all lived in Iran. So my favorite cousin, obviously I'm not going to name names because he's always in some trouble about some shit because he's a funny guy. But I had like never I had known his kids when I was young. But like every time I visited, they've basically been out of the country. So I hadn't seen his kids. He had two sons in a very long time because one of them lived in the UK for a while. He was like being a DJ or something. I don't know. And the other one was like in business school in a different part of Iran, in like the capital of Iran. So my dad is from like a more northern city in Iran. So I would never like see them, you know? I'd always hear, oh, they're doing well, whatever. Like I follow them on Instagram, simple. But I never like, I don't speak to them very often. So,
So technically you're their aunt, right? Is that what that be?
or they're my second cousins, technically.
Oh, I see. That's right.
Their cousin, their father is my cousin. My
yes. Okay. I get confused.
my-
with the
my
English
aunt's
terms
son.
are slightly different with. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Copy.
so this is my aunt's son.
Yes. Your cousin's kid.
My cousin, so my cousin, and so, okay, so my cousin, he has two sons
Okay.
who are around my age.
Okay.
Um,
I'm just
so
like
the
drawing
oldest
lines
son-
in my room, just like.
I know. The oldest son is in the has for the most part been in the UK doing his thing, but he's back in Iran now. The other son, who's maybe like a year or two younger than me, he was in business school for a very long time because also my cousin, my aunt's son, is a businessman and has a big like business running like chickens.
There's so much build up to this that I'm expecting like a farce where you like go to the market and run into your cousins to get into a brawl, and then you're like, "You're my cousin?" It's like all in a jail cell, just like
It's a lot weirder than that.
Oh really?
So-
Okay.
And a part of this, like, if you ever watched Rami, it's a very interesting thing.
Great
Like,
show,
he
Rami
touches
Youssef.
on it a lot on his show, where it's like, when you're born and raised in a different country, you don't really know your family that well. Like,
Yeah.
you know them when you're visiting, but you're not, like, super, super close.
Yeah.
And sometimes you meet family members that you just didn't know. Like, you've
Yes.
never really met. Or you met as a baby, but you don't know them as, like, an adult.
That's
So-
true for Chinese as well. Yeah, like there are all the American cousins, the ones that like also the siblings moved here, and we used to like have like two sides where the American cousins would speak English, and then the ones from Taiwan would just be like over there doing their thing. But there's also ones where you just literally have like I went to China once when I was in 8th grade. And met cousins that I'll probably never ever see again in my life. But we took pictures together and had a ball, and then I don't know their names. Like I could not even point them out in a crowd. I remember they were nice, but it's like
I
pretty
think
common.
that's the case with a lot of kids of immigrant parents. You know, you just kind of it is what it is. You're disconnected from your blood relatives.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get to it. I was just trying to create the context when I'm about
No,
to tell
I love it. I'm seeing. I mean, wow. I could go any direction now. Like I'm really excited to see where you take us.
So, my cousin, we're at dinner at his house. I'm like talking about being a feminist. Like I was like, I consider myself a feminist, and you know, I'm there with my dad, my cousin, and some family friends, and they're like, oh yeah, and my cousin, who again is like a 55-year-old man, he goes feminist. Now, is that the same thing as a lesbian? And I was like, no, that's feminist believes in equality for both men and women, you know?
But also,
And
it would make me wonder, like, but also, what do you think a lesbian is? Because it's like if he's getting words wrong, it's like, what are the words that you're using? Just out of curiosity.
right. So I think he just has like a very dated idea of what it means to be like a feminist. You know,
Okay.
like think like you hate men, so you're a lesbian. You know, like just
Gotcha.
like
Yeah.
he doesn't know because they don't have these sorts of discussions.
You're
like
unmarried, so you're a lesbian for sure. Yeah.
Yes, I'm the American cousin who comes in and is like telling them how things are.
Okay.
So I was like, no. A lesbian is a person who likes women, a woman who likes women, the same sex as them. And a feminist is just a person who believes in equality for men and women. And he's like, oh, okay. Because I wasn't sure. I was like, maybe she's telling us she's a lesbian. I'm like, yeah, I mean, whatever. And also, like, we'd been drinking. So here's the thing. Alcohol is illegal in Iran.
Okay.
So, everyone, some people make their own homemade wine, and some of them ferment it for too long, and it gets very strong.
Uh-huh.
And of course, I don't know how science works, so maybe that whatever. I'm guessing, but sometimes it gets very strong because they make it that way. So
Yeah.
my uncle made like a very strong batch of
Okay.
homemade wine that literally was like everyone was complaining about it. I remember during this trip,
Oh my
everyone
God.
because he kept bringing it everywhere, and everyone kept being like, I'm drunk.
Oh my
Like,
God.
I had a glass and I'm drunk. So,
What's
anyway,
it? What do you ferment, or what are you fermenting? Is it like fruits, or because I know there's different in or like Chinese culture or Taiwanese, I don't know. What do I say? The non-communist side of Chinese culture, there's like really, really strong wine, baijiu. I guess I shouldn't exclude the communists. I think they drink it too, but I just don't want to attribute it to them. But the baijiu is similar. It's like rice wine, but it's so fermented. It's like you can have a shot of it and then like you're like singing songs and dancing.
yeah. I think they're just using grapes. I don't fully
Okay,
know.
wow, strong grapes.
Yeah, I don't really know. But a lot of people, you can buy from a bootlegger, but a lot of people also just make their own wine because,
Gotcha.
sometimes easier.
So your cousin's got the bootleg moonshine.
Yeah, and it usually like they have like a giant container tub
my
thing
God.
with like a lid that like you pour out. Like you literally like put your cup in. Like it's funny. So anyway, we've had some of that, which I keep being like, I don't want to drink this because I don't want to be this drunk. Like it's unnecessary for having a glass of wine. So my cousin is like, well, good to know you're not a lesbian because I would love for you to meet my son. And I'm like, what?
What?
Like, your son? I was like, I know your son. We met when we were kids. He's like, no. But now that he's an adult, he needs a wife.
Oh my God.
So, would you be interested in meeting him in that capacity? And I'm literally like,
Wow.
I'm like, okay, slow the fuck down. I'm his cousin.
Oh my God.
And he's like, well, what about it? Like, you're second cousins. It doesn't matter. Who cares? And I'm like, no. My dad is sitting there on the other side of the table, just like, first of all, my dad drinks a lot, so he's just like wasted. He's just like laughing. Just like, yeah, you should meet. Because my dad doesn't care. So he knows me that I'm not going to go like marry a family member. So he's like, my dad is like encouraging me. He's like, yeah, you should meet him.
Oh
You
my
should
God.
meet him. And I'm like, what is going on here?
Wait,
and I'm
can
like,
I ask, like, is this very funny? But I just want to make sure I'm getting the context right. Like, he is saying that, and this is a strange thing, or are there like sort of old school beliefs, like culturally, that people still have?
look, yes, it's that. So
Okay.
basically, it's very common to marry like a second cousin. Like my mom's parents are second cousins.
Gotcha.
It's
Oh, okay. But that's a
It
generational
happens.
thing. That to me, because similar in my, I used to have a joke about this, and then I did have to like be like, is this a thing that I like? Am I crossing over into like making fun of the past or people's culture now? That my mom had friends who, when I used to babysit for their kids, later I grew up and found out that because then they got a divorce and the whole thing, and then they had adopted, and then my mom later was like, yeah, well, they couldn't have kids. Well, you know how they're like first cousins, and I was like, what? Like what? And she was like, it was a different time back then. I was like, I was alive back then. What are you talking about? Like that's, I know them. Like, what do you mean back
Yeah.
then? But I do think because they came from the older country, like sometimes you just hang on to old beliefs for a long time. I don't think it's common practice as a mainstream thing. But I just wanted to clarify, so I didn't want to feel like be insensitive.
No,
if it's a
no. It is pretty like it's not as common as it used to be, but it still happens every once in a while. Like it was more common when my parents.
Yeah, I think
married. Like, my
generationally,
parents aren't
that-
related because they met in America, but like
Yeah.
my parents' parents, whatever. Because a lot of marriages in Iran are kind of not like necessarily arranged, but you like meet someone
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, I like them. And you tell your parents you like them. And then the parents have to meet the parents. And the parents basically decide if this is going to be a good match. And then they come to you and go, okay, we think they're a good family. If you're in, then we're in. And then you have to be like, okay, we're in. And then there's like a few more meetings there's like meetings over your guys' marriage. And then it's decided, okay, well, and it's like dowry system as well. Like, how much money are you going to give my family? Like, from the bride to the husband. It's a whole thing.
But that, to me, like, in the old school mentality, there's also practical benefits to knowing the family. Like, to me, I'm like, we know about genetics and, like, generally speaking, don't fuck your cousin. But, like, I understand not everyone was aware of that back then. But some of the benefits were that you know the network, which now is less of a, it's kind of moot because with the internet and social media, you can kind of get to know someone's character. You can background check someone easier, where back then I could see why it might not feel safe marrying a stranger as opposed to all the options, all you had was your cousins, you know. So I can see that, but that's why I feel it's a generational thing. Like to think about someone now with the access to the internet and dating apps doing that, it does make me go, is it just for tradition? Like, what is the benefit of this?
Yeah, I think a part of it is also just like women have, like, culturally, women need to be like protected, you know? Like, the sanctity of your daughter needs to be protected. Like, there's no real, like, you're not supposed to be like dating in Iran. Like, to this day, like, women don't date men. Like, you can if you're more modern and low key about it, and like your parents maybe aren't as strict, but for the most part, like, you don't really date. Like, you go like, I met this guy, I have an attraction towards him, and so I'm going to tell my parents so my parents can contact his parents and try and set up a situation.
Nice, honestly.
Where we,
no, I mean,
like,
it's, yeah, I know what you mean. Did your parents know, I'm guessing your parents have met your boyfriend, but what about your, like, for their family in Iran? Like, do you just not talk about that in front of them?
No one like, everyone understands my deal. I'm the American cousin. They don't try and push that on me at all. Like, they're fully aware. Like, also my dad, like, is more of like a, at this point, like a patriarchal figure in our family. Like, he's the uncle who went and made a life in Iran. So people, like, it's almost in a way, like, kind of, I find it a little, like, fucked up how they treat him. And it makes a lot of sense why he's kind of has a bit of an ego. But, like, he literally will, like, sit on a chair, and grown men who are, like, in their 50s or 60s will come and sit around him on the ground as he talks.
Story
like,
time.
It's a little, like, yeah, it's like story time, but they're just, like, listening to his word, like, what he's saying, like, almost as if he's preaching. Like, that's how they treat.
Our dads are similar in that way. My dad loves to talk, so do I, but he literally, when he became born again, I swear it was because he liked the attention. Like, he would just go into rooms and do testimonies, and people would be like, wow, your dad has a way with words. And I was like, imagine having this every night at dinner. Like, I'm bored.
But, like, I feel like the only place he kind of gets that respect is in Iran. Like, here it's like, yeah, sure, we get it, Dad, whatever. But we're all just, like, you know, Americanized shithole kids who are just like, leave me alone. Yeah, Dad, we know you've said that to us before. You know, like, we're all just brats here. And he's always like, why did I come here? Oh, you're draining me of all my money. That's all I ever said.
He's like, I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but I bet in a way, like, he's proud of the fact that you also produce podcasts. Like, as a man who likes to talk and have people hear him, you are kind of passing on a torch of sorts. Like, you host a podcast and you have a wide audience and you talk about your life and experiences. Like, I mean, that kind of, you kind of like carrying the torch there.
Yeah, I guess so. But, like, I'm more of a mix between, my mom is incredibly quiet. My mom does not say, it's very hard to get stuff out of my mom. Like, she just doesn't talk. Like, she's a quiet lady. And I'm a mix of both. I only talk like this when I'm on shows. If you see me in real life, like, in front of people I don't really know, like, maybe around you, sure, I'll talk to you because I know you. Like, you know, in the office, I'll talk to my coworkers. But, like, for the most part, like, I'm not a very chatty person. But when I'm, like, around people I'm not as super comfortable with, like, I'm not chatting anyone up. You know, some people are like, I never met a stranger. Like, I only meet strangers. I'm not trying to tell anyone.
I remember meeting you, and that does track, but to me, it's almost like intimidating. Like, you always seem very, like, sure of yourself. Like, you'd be like, you often be like more quiet than comedians around because everyone is so in need of validation that people are like just riffing, making jokes. But then you just be there and be like, okay, like, I don't need to impress you. So I remember that was the vibe that I always got from you. Like, in a very like, she's very confident and doesn't need to win my love.
I just, I think I've watched my dad talk so much my whole life, and I really, I know how to turn it on when I need to, which almost sounds kind of like sociopathic in a weird way, but like, it's more like I see how my mom, her whole thing is like, I don't talk to talk. Like I only say what I want to say, like what I feel needs to be said. And I've always like really respected that about her. Like my dad's just like chatting everyone up, like anywhere in a line, be like, oh, so you buying that, huh? You're like, what are you, why? It's like, my mom will like smile at you and be polite, but she's just not going to start talking to you because she needs to fill the space. And like, that's always, I've really, I take that side of her. Like, if I don't feel like I need to say anything, like I won't say anything. And it's kind of been a weird thing in like meetings now that I like have a career in podcasting or whatever the hell. But like, sometimes people will turn to me and be like, hey, you didn't say anything. Did you want to say anything? And I'm like, I don't need to. No, I would have said something if I wanted to say something. It's more just like you're in a meeting with like 5 people. Everyone's kind of already said what needs to be said. Like I actually don't need to say anything because it would be repetitive. So I don't say anything. And it's just like,
I love that because it's like when you do talk, people listen. There's a difference between being shy because people aren't listening and like when you talk, everyone's like, huh, she's talking. Listen, what did she say?
I think there is a shyness to it as well because I don't like to put myself in front of people unless I really have to. Like if I could just kind of
what's that like? No.
blend in the background and not have to be focused on. That's also nice too because like, with attention comes scrutiny, and I hate scrutiny, which is dumb because I've decided to start a podcast, and I'm on Twitter, which is like killing my soul. But like, here I am getting a little taste. It's like almost like a rush I get from this side of my life of being so out there that well, not like super out there, but like having a show where I talk about these sorts of things is like very, it's unlike my character growing up to do something like this.
Gotcha.
And I'm of a very like cultural mindset of like, do the work, don't make a fuss, keep your head down, and like you will go far and be able to live comfortably as long as you just like keep your head down, do the work. And the more like talking side comes from my dad of wanting to be like, fuck it, like I have an opportunity to have a voice and talk about things that I think matter. So I need to step out of my shell and just do it. Does that not come with like anxiety and sleepless nights over things I've said on my podcast or on other people's podcasts? Yeah, I am a mess. And that's why I smoke weed and that's why I compartmentalize so aggressively.
Well, I hope this one doesn't stress you out, but I would like to hear what happened next. Like, how did you react when your uncle or your cousin said this?
So I was like, that's like very nice, but I've met your son. And he goes, yeah, but you haven't known him in years. You don't know who he is now. And I was like, yeah, but he's my cousin and I'm not really interested in like marrying my cousin. And it was funny. Like I could see it like him being like, oh, okay. Yeah. I could see where you're coming from there. Yeah. Like it was like occurring to him like, oh, I see what she means. Yeah. You guys are related technically. Okay, sure. All right. And I was like, yeah, thank you.
Wow.
And that's kind of like, and then my dad is just being like, are you sure? Like, egging on the situation. We're like, dude, stop, you're drunk. But yeah, he didn't really like, after I kind of put it in perspective of like, we have the same blood.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Also, I live in America. Your son lives in Iran. Like, are you looking for a green card situation? Because that's not the first time I've been propositioned in Iran for a green card situation. Yeah. Like when people's moms hear I'm the American cousin, people are up on my ass. I was one time at in another part of Iran in Shomal, which is like where the Caspian Sea is, at like a resort. Or like it's not a resort. It's like a it's like a apartment building that my uncle owns, like a vacation apartment penthouse situation in, and I call it a penthouse because it looked like a penthouse. I don't know, maybe all of them look like that. But I was like downstairs in like the women's like sauna area. And I was sitting in the hot tub and with my cousin, and a woman joined us, and she was like, oh, where are you guys from? And I was like, oh, well, I'm from America, but I'm staying here with my family in Tehran, and we just came for the weekend. And she immediately was like, America. Wow, well, my son is in America right now going to school, and he's going to lose his visa soon after he graduates, but we want him to stay so he can keep working. And that's so funny. You're from America. Like, are you interested in getting married? Like, it was like immediate. And I was like, I was literally like creeping out of the hot tub, like, yeah, I think I need to go cool off.
That's so, because it's just like, it's funny to me because it's really jumping in so fast that like, it's almost like they hadn't really thought of it. Because imagine if you had said yes. Like, I almost feel like they don't expect it, but they're like, shoot your shot. But if you had been like, yes, I've been dying to get married, I do feel like that would disarm them. Like, they'd be like, oh, wait, hold on. Let me get some more information about you because, that's not what I expected. Like,
I think though, like, assuming that like I'm in this building, which is, you know, like a nice building with my cousin, and then I also like live in America. I don't know. I think she just immediately assumed like, perfect. You seem like you come from money. You're in this building. Good. Let's do this. And your cousin here who lives in Iran is just like being very, this is also my cousin who is the chattiest human being alive. Like, she's never met a stranger. Like, just chatting this woman up. So she's probably like, well, she seems super friendly and you're from America. So like, let's do this. But I was like, I gotta go. Like, I literally was like, I'm going to go into the pool and swim in the pool for a little bit because I have to get away from your energy trying to get me to marry your son. Like, I just met you in a hot tub in a random city in Iran. Like, leave me alone.
oh my God. Wow. I mean, it's funny because I'm also like, did your cousin who propositioned this think about it, or he's just drunk? He's like, oh, whoa,
No, he
you know what I
just
mean?
like, we're just the cousins that get along the best. Like, me and him are like, we literally call ourselves like best friends. Like, we're just having, our jokes, like our sense of humor is the same. Like, we always laugh about things. We like the same food, you know, like we just like all are constantly like joking with each other and making fun of each other. Like, we just are the two cousins who get along the best. So I think in his eyes, he's like, you'd be perfect for my son.
So funny. Did you ever actually meet his sons as an adult? Like, have you met them?
Yes,
back?
I've
Okay.
since like, literally like, he had just graduated business school and we had just
gotcha.
gotten home. And like, I think I like met him like a day later.
And you were like, ooh, he's actually kind of hot. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, he was fine. Like,
No, I know,
the thing
it's
is,
not.
he looks like my family. Like, he looks like my cousin. Like, it was like almost nonsensical that I would be attracted to my dad. You know, like,
so
everyone
funny.
looks the same in my family on my dad's side. So I was like, I really don't imagine me like wanting to marry.
Yeah.
Like, he looks just like my cousin, his father.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not trying to marry you. You're my cousin. And then it's like, yeah, you're great. You're nice. You're attractive young man. And you'll make a woman in Iran very happy.
You know what's funny about that too? Because it's so much. It's like when you look at like very different cultural experiences, and then you kind of look at the negative space. You do see that there's not one that's like if you think about in America, it's like it is very frowned upon to marry cousins, but then you get like family secrets, like what's that play, August Osage County, where it's like the cousins are dating and it's a whole scandal. And then it's like, if it's looked down upon because you're not supposed to do it, but people are still doing it, then there is like probably a place to be like figuring out what the fuck is going on, because it's not that you're like, what I'm not saying you're supposed to date your cousins. I'm trying to say that, I don't know how to explain this, but that there's like all these human rules we put on things that when you grow up in one, you feel like that's the only one. And then when you're in another, you feel like that's the only, but really the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, which is like, for evolutionary reasons, probably don't date your cousins, but also at some point it was also evolutionarily beneficial. And now just try to look at the real situation instead of being stuck in like how it used to be. But I think both sides are just the same coin, but like they went off in different directions, you know?
Right. I do think maybe if I was born and raised in Iran, maybe I would have been open to it. Who knows?
I
Like,
don't think that,
I don't
generally
know.
speaking, I think evolution supports going outside of your gene pool.
Right.
For just, I mean, it's the same thing as, why do birds get kicked out of the nest? Like, if it's safe in the nest forever, why wouldn't you just stay in the nest? It's not evolutionary beneficial for a mama bird to just have eggs and then feed those birds until they're old. Like, you do need the kick out of the nest, which I think is proof that it tends to be better to partner up and, you know, reproduce outside of your family. But it's also not like, I don't know. It's also like, the opposite end of like, so then you have to fuck your cousin quietly. It's like, that's not the thing, okay? If that's where you are, and when people do that, like in those, scandalous movies, it's like, you're also not doing it right. You're just doing that for social acceptance, but you're still doing the thing that's supposedly not beneficial. So there's like a way in between where you can actually address the reality instead of just looking at like what's acceptable.
Yeah, I should look into that more. I haven't really, honestly, like, I don't think about it very often. I just kind of know it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, I know my mom's parents are second cousins.
Yeah.
And I try not to dive too much deeper than that to be like, well, I guess I'm inbred, like, it is what it is. What are you going to do?
I do think it's about, I think it's a very funny story, and it also actually opened up a lot of interesting conversations because, like, the cultural conversation it's not saying like black and white, like, oh, everything like this is bad or good. But what I think is interesting, having also similar experiences with my family, is that at no point was I like, oh, that must be how everything is in Iran. And I do sometimes feel like when I talk to, not all white people, but some very Americans who never left, anything slightly out of the ordinary, they're like, oh, that must be how they do it. So either we can't question it at all because that will make me racist, or wow, let me laugh at all of it because it's weird. So I really do like talking about stuff like this because it's like shows you that like pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to have like moments that might seem funny or absurd, and to treat it realistically and actually react honestly is the best way versus like, oh no, like I guess I have to marry my, like there's no, black and white to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really judge it. Like, to me, it's just like, I don't care. If you end up doing it, you end up doing it. I turned it down because it just wasn't for me as a person.
And you're in a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I was at the time.
Oh, gotcha.
2016. But, like,
I see.
still, like, it just wasn't my thing. But, like, when I saw it on Rami, and not to give any spoilers, but he has, an incident with a family member. And I was like, yeah, it is what it, like, that's what happens. Like, I'm not going to judge him. Like, he's portraying a very real thing in our communities, in our cultures, that, at times, situation you end up in, and there's nothing wrong with it. It just, your circumstances brought you here. Yeah. And you shouldn't feel bad about it because our cultures are different. It just is what it is, and you can't really, you can't blame anyone. Like, you can't be like, oh, well, if only they were more open, or not open-minded, like, if they were less closed-minded about their culture, or, like, you can't really, like,
it's not one is right and one is wrong. It's, there's
exactly.
many factors that go into what's right and wrong for you in your life, but there's not one blanket, like, this is the way everyone needs to do things.
Exactly. I know we're literally talking about, like, familial marriage, but it's like, hey, look, okay.
I think yes, but I think for me, like, it's not the thing, but that's what I mean is, like, you can't put that on you don't know the situations. Like, there could be certain situations, like what you're saying, like back in the day or whatever.
I'm not saying, hey, let's let people fuck their siblings. I want to make it very clear, okay?
Yeah, we live in this world, and I'm not trying to change it.
Yeah, I understand what incest is, and I don't agree with it, okay? Yeah. I do think there are cultures that we don't understand the ins and outs of because we were not raised in them, to, like, try and, like, judge the situation,
I think that's the key, is the judging.
I don't agree with marrying your sibling.
Yeah.
Second cousin, I can understand, because it's like there's a removal there. Not saying go marry your sibling. I think there is a darkness a little to that situation. Cousins is a bit of a gray area.
It's interesting because even, like, viscerally when you say that, I'm like, yeah, I see your point, but I don't, like, I don't agree in my body now, but, like, I think the key word you used was judge. I also don't judge, because I think how I see it is, like, it doesn't really affect me, but if there are, in situations where people need to be protected, that's when laws come in. And that's why there are laws, because sometimes it does get exploited. But in situations that's not the case, then putting the judgment on another culture that's actually not doing it to exploit, like, you're bringing your own, like, baggage in. So I totally agree on, like, it's not about being right or wrong. It's just, like, if you're judging something else that is different than you and not affecting you. They may be on their road to change. Who knows? You may be on your road to change. So it's not like either of them are right. It's just that, like, maybe don't just, like, be so quick to judge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that about, like, when people talk about capital punishment, corporal punishment. What's the one where you hit your kids? It's pretty common in Asia. And whenever I've, like, defended it, I don't defend hitting your kids. But what I try to get at is, like, the conversation, like, I was hit growing up. I wish I wasn't, but I am alive and I'm me. So I try not to make it black and white. Like, everyone who does this is a monster. There's a way to grow. Like, perhaps people are changing in Asia, and I think they are. But also perhaps there's ways we're doing it differently in America that we could improve on. So when it becomes black and white, then it becomes no change at all on either side. And that's why I like having the conversation. Because, like, there are a lot of things I learned discipline-wise that I feel like sometimes the American way of raising kids is too lax, but I don't support hitting your kids. But there's a little bit like there's a middle space where you use this sort of like discipline of like actually setting rules and following them versus just being lax, but without the part where you traumatize your child. So it's like neither of these are totally it. And I think in order to get to the it, you have to actually allow them to talk to each other.
Yeah, I think it's corporal punishment. I looked it up.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, like I also think it's more common within our cultures to like hit your kid. I mean, of course, I wasn't like beat as a child, but I was like slapped across the face when I was being a real shithead, and I don't think it traumatized me personally because I was very used to what was like it never went past a slap. Like a slap was almost literally like, get yourself to fucking together. Like that was my interpretation of a slap. When I got slapped, I knew, oh, like I've gone too far, because my parents aren't just gonna slap me. So when I did get slapped, it was like a shameful thing. Like what you've done is shameful. And then I would be like, okay, I see what I've done wrong here. I've gone too far in my parents' eyes, and I've created shame, and now I need to feel that shame. And but that's like as far as it ever went for my parents, and it really had to get to that point to get slapped across the face with my parents, because my parents aren't really like, my dad is a yeller. My mom is more of like a quiet, angry speaker when she's really mad. She gets very quiet. She's a quiet person, so she'll just, that's when I know she's angry, when her voice gets very like this. Then I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. But my dad will scream at you, like fucking scream at you, like a thunderous scream where it like cuts through your soul and it feels like the house is shaking.
Oh, man.
And that, oh man, have I been raised on some screams, man. I was just a terrible kid. I was just a little asshole. But like, like I saw my brother get, it's like that to me was like, it is, again, it culturally, like getting slapped was like, that was their way of being like, even a scream is not worthy. You're getting slapped across the face. But of course, that was also my youth. It did not continue on in my adulthood. Yeah. I think
it's also context clues. Like if it doesn't, I'm saying like everything is a conversation. I'm not saying like this is the way, but if everyone is getting slapped when they go too far, it doesn't feel like I'm different, which is why if you're in a community that nobody does it and then you do it, it has a different effect. It's not just a slap. It's feeling like, why am I being treated differently? So there are like so many layers to that. And just as like we discover more science behind, raising children and development, we might find better ways to teach our kids that doesn't involve that. But we don't have it yet. So that's why I like having it as like a conversation in terms of like, it's not defending hitting or not hitting. It's that at the time they wanted you to learn, you did learn. So they achieved their goal. Is there a way to learn as we do more research that lesson without hitting? Probably. And then at some point when we have those tools, we can use them.
Yeah. Like I do think like, it's also generational. Like I don't think I'll ever slap my kids. Like I think that was their culture growing up, that was okay to slap your kid to make a point that they were being shit, But like in the world I grew up in, I don't find that acceptable. I understand it happened in my youth. I don't hold it
Yeah.
against my parents because that's what they knew. That's how they knew to discipline in extreme measures.
Yes.
I don't plan on slapping my kids,
Yeah.
but that's also like what I've learned in my experiences growing up in America. So like I don't believe in child abuse, obviously, if
But
that's
you
not.
also learn how to communicate. Like, that's another thing people
Yeah.
forget as parents when they do that. They weren't given tools of how to properly teach
No.
their children. So that to them was like, they may have been at a breaking point too, like how do you self-regulate your anger? And
Yeah.
now us knowing not to, like, if you don't want to hit your kids and that's a no-no for you personally, then you would find another way because you have to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think it's a conversation.
And to give more context, like my dad grew up in a time where your teachers hit you.
Yeah.
Like that's wild to
Oh my
me.
God.
Imagine being in school and your teacher's like, "You dumb bitch," and hits you.
Oh my
Like with
God.
one, they had sticks they would hit their hands with, and that's the
Yeah.
world my dad grew up in, where he's like, if I acted out in school, my teacher was allowed to hit me. Like that's wild. A teacher.
It's wild because also, like, when I think about how much I loved school, I'm like, imagine also getting hit at school. I'd be like, where would I have
Yes.
turned to? I don't know.
And
Oh,
I
man.
think it kind of created this like almost militaristic vibe in my dad of like where he's like, you have to be good, you have to do this, you don't want to get hurt, school is good, school's great, it teaches you discipline, and you're like, bro, chill out. That's not my school, that's
so
your
funny.
school. Like, yeah, school's important, but like it's not like I don't take it like that intensely,
Yeah.
like you did, because you had to be good or a teacher was going to hit you, and you had to get things right because the teacher was going to hit you. Like that's too much.
True.
We're in two different worlds, which is fine. That was his experience. I don't judge him. It is what it is.
It's
say that a lot.
it's true
It
that all
is
the
what it is.
shorthands we have for things like that we think are that mean the same thing in life, like saying the word school. Like we all have a general idea of school, but
Yeah.
across generations, it can bring up very different emotions. So that's very interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to end with a quick game. I call this the three rules. I don't think it's really a game. It's more of me asking you one question. You have to answer it. But I've been doing this because I'm really curious about, we're talking about like rules and sort of, especially coming from different backgrounds and understanding so many different ways of doing things. If you could create like your own island, your own government, let's say town, and people consensually, willingly, if they come live here, they have to all follow these three rules, and you can't use magic. What would those rules be?
Okay. Thinking about that. So one would be just like treat people how you would like to be treated, so with respect.
What if someone wanted to be treated poorly? They're just allowed to do that?
If there's consent, yes.
Okay.
If there's a consensual consensual agreement that someone would like to be treated a certain way because it's their choice, and maybe if it's a fetish or a kink or whatever, or just just genuinely what they're into, there's an agreement in place. And I think more than ever, I feel like this is very topical. It's like safe words, making sure everyone's comfortable, and there's a point of clear agreement of when the person needs to stop at any point. That's fine.
That's a good rule, because like the golden rule we think is very standard, but there's so many nuances to it. But like clarifying with the consent and safe word does change things, because not everyone wants to be treated the same. So that's why the golden rule is kind of like stops short of actually helping, because people are like, well, I wanted this. And it's like, well, but I like your addendum. So there is a clear communication of whether you want to receive this treatment before I do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rule 2. I guess everyone. I would kind of like it to be like a cooperational situation.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what that rule would be. So like we live in a co-op, like everyone contributes to the livelihood of everyone.
Yeah, that's nice.
I guess that's how you would say that.
Communist? No, I'm just kidding. No, co-ops are great because
Hey,
it's
baby,
half.
I'll take it. I'll take
I
it.
like
I'll
when
take
it's
it.
like co-ops are great because people always point to them as an example of communism, but I'm like, but it's not because you're doing it within another structure of institutions. If it was all like that, there would be like a very small percentage of people skimming off the top, which is because there's always going to be like there needs to be some leadership. So works better when it's institutions plus co-op. I like that. Okay, third rule, and it can be fun too. It doesn't have to be super serious.
Yeah. Third rule would be Medicare for all.
Okay.
Everyone deserves and has a right to health care.
I mean, these are great rules. I would live here. This seems like it should just be every country's basic tenets. So everyone else, if you're starting a country, please incorporate these rules. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Respect/consent. Health care. And taking care of everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, what a dream.
What a dream. Wow. Some might have called it the American dream, but I don't know if that's true anymore. Where can people find you, follow you, listen to your things, check out your secret Twitch upcoming?
Yeah, I am at Anna Hossnieh, ANNAHOSSNIEH on Twitter. Check that out. I host a show. Also, I'll post about a lot of my shows on my Twitter, but I host a show called Ethnically Ambiguous with my co-host Shireen Yunez, all about being a person of color in America. I host another show called Deckheads, all about the Bravo's reality show Below Deck. Check that out. I also produce a bunch of podcasts for iHeart, including the Daily Zeitgeist, which is a daily news and pop culture show, hosted by Jack O'Brien and Miles Gray. I produce another podcast about the Bachelor series called Will You Accept This Rose, which is hosted by Arden Marine. So check that out if you like The Bachelor. And I host a bunch of other shows, or I keep saying host. I produce a bunch of other shows, like Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang. This is Important with it, which is hosted by the guys from Workaholics. That crew. I work on a bunch of shows at iHeart, so if you follow me on Twitter, you can learn about all of them.
Yes, do it. All great shows. Anna is a super producer. I like that even your plugs felt very like professional, because it was great. It was very much, I could tell you're a pro. You can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod and follow me at Larissa T on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you.